Tampa General Hospital and USF Health Morsani College of Medicine are bringing the power of academic medicine to Palm Beach County and the Treasure Coast. For nearly 2 decades, Tampa General has been ranked as one of the nation's best hospitals. And for over 50 years, Tampa General has been Florida's leading academic health system. Learn more about their growing network of physicians at tgh.org/the Palm Beaches. All right, so welcome back to the Palm Beach North Podcast. I'm your host, Noel Martinez, and today we are joined by the Danita DeHaney, President and CEO of the Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin Counties. She's got a strong background in both higher education and philanthropy. We're so excited to have her here, and under her leadership, the foundation has grown tremendously. So excited to have you. Danita, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Noel. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So I definitely want to talk about the foundation, but I think it's important for people to get to know you a little bit. Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about your journey. How'd you end up here in Palm Beach County?
Okay, so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I am from Maryland, and I started my higher education experience as a senior associate athletics director at the University of Maryland, the Terps. And so I worked with Debbie Al. We were the only 2 AD and senior associate AD females in the country at that time. We had 24 sports, over 650 student athletes, and that's how I got into higher ed.
Were you an athlete?
I was a cheerleader, so it depends on your perspective.
Yes, that's a sport.
It is a sport.
That is a sport.
But I supervised all of the Olympic coaches, all the coaches with the exception of football and men's basketball. So some of the coaches probably didn't think that I was a real athlete, but I was. And I loved the school, and being an athletic administrator was a very challenging job. And I was on the AD track for a while, but I realized that what you needed at that time as a woman to be leading an athletic department, I wasn't ready for that. And so we get a new president, and I get word that he wanted me to look at the alumni director job. I'm like, what's the alumni director? And lo and behold, he appointed me to be the alumni director, and it was like cheerleading for the university writ large. And our project was to build an alumni center. $26.5 million budget. We raised $33 million. And I was positioned well to do that because when I graduated from Maryland, I started at Xerox Corporation in its heyday, and I learned how to sell. So I was able to translate those skills into philanthropy. And they were surprised that I could raise money. So one thing led to another. I ended up being number 2 at Maryland. And then I get a call from the University of Florida. And this is 14 years ago.
By the way, congratulations to the Florida Gators, the national champions in basketball last night.
Yes, go Gators. Stay hot, Gators. And one thing led to another, and I ended up being in Gainesville for one of the best jobs ever. And I ended up being the senior associate for advancement, and in regular language, that's number 2 in raising money. And I learned a lot. I mean, the Gator Nation is just alive and well, and I learned how to not only raise annual dollars, but big transformational gifts. And it was wonderful. And when I was recruited, the president at the time said, you do everything here that we need you to do, and you can compete for the VP job. And what happened is my boss, the VP, got his contract extended. And, I'm older than I look. And I said, I don't want to be an understudy for the rest of my career. So one thing led to another. The VP job at FAU came open. I met with John Kelly, and what was supposed to be an hour turned into 2 hours. He was a Clemson guy. I was a Maryland girl. And we talked ACC for 2+ hours, and I was his person. And so that was 2016. And he gave me the resources to build a team. And I brought everything that I learned from Maryland and Florida with me. And we did really well. We raised more money in that period than FAU had raised in its history. And then what happens? COVID.
Yep.
And unlike Florida, the University of Florida and the University of Maryland, the fundraising at FAU sort of stalled. And I said to myself, I don't want my career to end this way. I don't want it to end on a downward trajectory. So I was very close to going to Auburn to be the senior VP for advancement. And then one Friday, I get a call from someone. I see the name. I'm like, oh, I think he might be calling for a gift. Well, he wasn't. He was calling to tell me about a wonderful opportunity that he thought I'd be great for. And that was Jeff Stoops. He was the CEO of SBA at the time. And one thing led to another. And I put my name in the hat, no guarantees, and I withdrew from the Auburn search. And 5 years ago, I was appointed president and CEO. So that's my story, the Reader's Digest version.
All right. So now you are here with the Community Foundation. You get the job. A lot of folks at home don't really know what the Community Foundation does. So can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, I was one of them that wasn't really sure what the Community Foundation did. And when I was recruited, the board at the time had studied community foundations around the country, and they wanted to know why the Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin counties could not serve as a leadership model, which meant that the Community Foundation was the convener and brought together business and government and philanthropists to tackle issues that negatively affected the community. So that was their vision. And so when I started, I met with a number of people who asked me, what do you do? And the bottom line, we strengthen communities. And we do that by amplifying philanthropy, talking about philanthropy, attracting it to affect positively issues that hurt our community. And we do that with individuals and families. And we do that by providing grants to nonprofits who are on the front lines of our community doing amazing work. And then we've just started to do identifying issues and bringing philanthropy to address them.
So under your leadership, you guys have grown drastically.
Yes.
How have you done that?
Well, it starts with our board, and it starts with a strategic plan. So Julie Fisher Cummings was the board chair. And when I was hired, the board said unequivocally, we need to develop a strategic plan. So we brought in a partner, and we laid out a 5-year plan. And this was board driven and staff executing. And so when I meet with the board, I thank them because they put together a very thoughtful and intentional plan that would broaden our reach, attract more philanthropy so that we could make an impact in this community. And yeah, I'm actually pinching myself because when I started, we were at maybe 19, 20 million. And right now, we're over 51 million. And our last year, we finished the year at 33 plus million. And so we're humble. It's surprising. But when I look at it objectively, our success is really rooted in the plan. It was a very well developed set of objectives and plans that we've been executing faithfully.
So you said that you help shape communities. You really do. How do you do that? So how do you work with nonprofit organizations and community organizations to help?
Yeah. So when you are a place-based organization like we are and 900 other community foundations in the country, you aim to, first of all, understand the nonprofit expertise in your footprint. And you work with them to understand how they are providing services to our community. And so the first 2 or 3 years, I was out meeting my counterparts, finding out what they do, how they do it, and what the gap was. And so when we facilitate our grant making, we are really clear on the focus areas that we're going to fund and the nonprofits who are eligible for that funding, and we collaborate. And we love being able to help them do good stuff.
So you've been doing this for about 5 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just about 5 years over.
5 years.
5 years.
Yes,
a little over 5 years.
Right.
How do you think that your experience in higher ed really helped you in your role today?
Okay, so that's a really great question. And I would go back before higher ed, before I got that athletics position. I worked at Xerox, as I said earlier, during its heyday. And what Xerox was known for was its amazing sales training. And the thing that I learned at an early age in my professional career is that customer needs, donor needs, human needs are the focal point of everything. And it is your job as a salesperson, as a fundraiser, as a leader to understand what the needs are of the person that you're communicating with. And we used to have this saying, and my team will tell you, we aim to learn the need behind the need. So you meet with a donor or a prospect, somebody's relocated to the community, and they say, oh, I'm interested in funding this. We don't jump on that. We start asking questions to learn what's driving that. And when you get behind the need, then the magic happens and you're actually doing more than what you thought.
So you guys have accomplished some pretty great stuff here in the last 5 years since you've been here. What are you most proud of?
Oh, wow. There's so many things. Okay. There's two that I would want read at my obituary, which is a kind of an odd thing to say. But when I first started, I was really lucky to learn about a program at Florida State University out of their College of Social Work. It was a social and emotional program that was developed in response to Hurricane Michael. And what happened was after the TV cameras were gone, the community they were losing their children. And Florida State gets involved and they develop a program that's rooted in cognitive-based therapy. It's called Rebound and Recovery. And they taught these children how to navigate emotional disruptions so that they could be successful. So fast forward, I'm at a board meeting and one of our board members who's from the Glades is talking about the effects of COVID. And as she spoke, it was the same attributes that were used after Hurricane Michael. So in my tour of meeting my counterparts, I'm meeting with my counterpart of the Boys and Girls Club. And I say, I've got this idea. And she says, yes, before I could even finish it. And so what we were able to do was bring the Boys and Girls Club, Florida State University's program, it's called Rebound and Recovery, and we made a match. And this is a program that we started at Canal Point Elementary School. I went to the first session and I watched 10 little brown and black children come in. And I was so excited. I was a cheerleader and I was in cheerleading mode. And I went up to the staff and I said, how did these children get to be in the first class? And the staff looks at me without missing a beat and says, well, their behavior's already off the charts. Their grades are terrible, and we're worried about them. They're 5 and 6. So my heart sank, and I sat up front with them in a little semicircle. And what the program starts off doing is teaching children how to identify their emotions. What is happy? What is sad? What is angry? What is frustrated? And I was, wow, nobody ever taught me that, right?
Nobody ever taught me that.
Right. And so you're starting to feel what they're feeling. So the other key component is breathing. And if you've ever done any breath meditation, you'll recognize that it really settles you. So there's this gorgeous illustrated cup of hot chocolate and they take a deep breath. And when you take that deep breath, you kind of get settled. So that's lesson 1. At the end of the lesson, one little girl raises her hand and she says, okay, I am sad right now because I'm tired and I want to go home. And the staff was blown over because she didn't act out. She was actually able to translate what she learned real time and to express her needs. Okay, I go to my car and I just break down and cry. And it was like I was reminded, this is like God's work, right?
Mhm.
So then fast forward 4 lessons, I bring some board members and others because I said, you just got to see what this looks like. So at this point in the program, the children have a schematic of a child's body and the emotions are associated with a color: red, angry, blue, happy, yellow, sad. And the exercise is to color in on this schematic where you feel that emotion. So I'm sitting next to 3 little black boys who were just adorable. And the little boy next to me is coloring his hands and his feet red. And I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. So you have a master's, a clinical master's in social work trainer. And he says, talk us through that. And he says, because when I'm angry, I like to punch and I like to kick. So then the MSW, which is really a social worker, starts to process that. And the bottom line with this program is, you have your feelings. What are you thinking when you have those feelings? And how do those thoughts trigger your behavior? And it is, again, 5 to 12 years old. And they get to see how what they think is really important because it affects how they feel and it affects how they act. And so I love that. I love that. And these are kids that are underserved and underrepresented. And in a 9-month period, I think we got close to 1,500 children through the program. FSU's College of Ed did a pre and post assessment, and the evidence is compelling, is clear, it works. And so, yeah, I love that. I love that.
I love the Boys and Girls Club of Palm Beach County. We're so fortunate to have them here. They got a great leader. Jeannie Miranda is amazing.
Yes.
Big personality.
Yes, and she was all in. So we were able to do some really cool things with that program.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, what about the future? Like, what do you want to see in the future for the Community Foundation?
So there's a couple things, and I don't want this to sound transactional, but when I first arrived, about a year or so later, I brought an intern in, a friend of mine's daughter. She was at UF and she was a data scientist. And I said, I want to understand who the high performing community foundations are and why. So she and I put together a model, and the variables were assets under management, number of staff in development, number of staff in marketing, and a number of different things. And she gathered the data and ran the research. And what we learned is we're like 80 to 79 when you look at all of the high performing community foundations. And you must know that I'm very competitive, and I'm like, how can they be doing more for their community than we are? And then I honed in on the research and looked at the community foundations in South Florida, and we're still underperforming. And that makes me feel bad because there's so much wealth here. And I was challenged to figure out, how do we attract that wealth to the issues that reside or that our community is faced with. So I want, when my tenure is finished, to move us up the scale in terms of high performing community foundations. The Sarasota Community Foundation has almost $500 million under management. We're at about 270.
Yep.
And what that gap means is they're able to do more for the community. And so we're not raising money necessarily for ourselves. We're raising money to provide more to the nonprofits who are doing great work and to make Paradise, this community that we live in, accessible to more people. So that's how I would answer that.
So you and I were talking about the Florida Scorecard earlier, right? And how you're a huge fan. I'm a huge fan. I use it for everything at the chamber. By 2030, 87,000 people are moving into Palm Beach County.
Yes.
Not Palm Beach County and Martin County, but just in Palm Beach County, 87,000 people. That's less than, 6 years away, right?
Right.
How do you guys keep up? How does the foundation keep up with the growth?
Right.
And the ever evolving changes in the region, right? And the needs of the region, excuse me.
So very fair question. And we're doing a couple of things. First and foremost, we are strengthening our relationships with professional advisors. The professional advisors are key to our work because they are working with the families who have the wealth to actually allocate to our community. And if they don't know us and know what we do, it's hard for us to be in the mix. So if you're working with a family that's creating their estate plans, they're not going to call the community foundation in, but they will call their advisors in. And if we strengthen those relationships, we will be at the table. That's happening. It wasn't happening before. It's happening because we have worked really hard. It is in our strategic plan. So that's number one. Number two is we have to get better at conveying that it is important, essential to give where you live while you're living. And I learned that from FAU. And what do I mean by that? We have a number of people who spend 6 months in a day here. And I've done other research, and a lot of their money is still going north. And what we are trying to do is to inspire them to give where they're living and where they're enjoying. And we're having some success, not as much as we need to, but we are focused in on that.
So I want to get into education. I know education is super important to you guys. It's very important to the Palm Beach North Chamber as well. But before we do that, I want to take a quick little break for the medical minute.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
All righty.
All right, so we're talking with Dr. Alberto Ortiz, a nephrologist from TGH Advanced Kidney Care. Doc, thank you so much for being here. Let's talk about kidney disease. I hear it is a silent killer. Is that correct?
That is very correct. And kidney disease, you have to lose about 80% of your kidney function in order to have any symptoms at all. And once you do get to that point, the symptoms are very non-specific that you can find in other conditions like generalized weakness, fatigue, and poor appetite.
How do you treat it?
So we have, when you get to that point, we have what we call renal replacement therapies, and it consists on hemodialysis, in which we have a machine doing the filtering of the blood in replacement of the kidney. And then we have a kidney transplant in which you get another kidney from somebody else.
All right, so that sounds bad. I don't want to get there, Doc. So how do I prevent it?
So we have different therapies that coupled with good lifestyle modifications and good healthy eating and exercise do go a long way.
Great, Doc. Well, thank you so much. And that was your Medical Minute brought to you by TGH. All right, so we're back. Education, as I mentioned, is super important to the Palm Beach North Chamber. We actually have a foundation,
Yes.
as you know, that focuses on education here in the Palm Beach North region. I know it's a key focus of the foundation. So talk to me a little bit about your scholarship program. I believe it's celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. Tell me about its origins, how it started, and how it's impacting students here in our region.
Okay, so first two things. I'm really happy that you're raising the issue of education. I want to talk about our scholarship program, and I'd also, if there's time, like to mention literacy.
Yes, we got to talk about that. Yeah.
So we are one of the few community foundations that has a scholarship program, and that's in part because they're extremely labor intensive. Our program was started 40 years ago by a Jupiter family. Okay. LaRue, the Dahlberg family.
The Dahlberg family.
The
Okay.
Dahlberg family. They unfortunately had a son who had an accident on Christmas Eve and perished. They were devastated, but they wanted to honor him. So they created a scholarship in his honor and had all of their friends give money to the community foundation in a fund that they created so that a scholarship could be awarded in his name. Okay. So that was 40 years ago. Today, we grant or award rather about right under $1.5 million in scholarships to local Palm Beach High and Martin High School students. And if you look at why the Community Foundation exists, first, there are needs. And one of the needs that's significant in our community is we have a number of first-gen students who are smart, getting great grades, getting admitted to some of the state's finest schools, the country's finest schools. They don't have the money. That's a gap. That's a need. We're stepping in. So we have stepped in to provide scholarships to these students who deserve it. But last year we turned away 600 students because we didn't have enough money. So we are going to amplify even more the need for scholarship dollars in our community.
Okay. All right, let's talk about literacy then. You said literacy is super
Yes.
important. You want to talk about it. It's so important to the business community. I tell this all the time to our members, right? Literacy is a business issue.
Oh, no question. And 2 years ago, Julie Lauterbach, our vice president for marketing and community engagement, we were looking for what our feature would be for the next Founders Luncheon. And we became aware of the literacy rate in our community. And basically, more than 50% of our third graders cannot pass the third grade assessment test.
And we've improved over the last 3 years because it was in the 40s not too long ago.
What a sobering statistic. And I was really moved by this because this is not a good reflection on a community that has the profile nationally that ours has. So I called James Patterson because I knew that he was funding a program at the University of Florida. And he says, Danita, are you calling me to ask for money? I said, not today. I really want your advice. And I said, is this fixable? Can we actually change this? And he said, absolutely, no question. And the University of Florida has the vaccine. So he introduced us to Dr. Holly Lane in Gainesville, who runs and founded the University of Florida Literacy Institute. We had multiple meetings with her, and I learned so much, and I was shocked. I did not know that over 40 years ago, this country moved from teaching reading phonetically to teaching reading by sight. So we were all taught TH added an E. I mean, we could code. Mm-hmm. She said 40 years ago that stopped. And they recognized that that was an issue. So she started this institute. And the institute is focused on teaching teachers how to teach their students phonetically. And so we brought her in. But more importantly, we looked at the success they were having in Alachua County, in Duval County, in Tampa. What's the county? Hillsborough County. Yeah. And I said, we need to amplify this. And so as a result of having her present, we received a $200,000 gift from a donor, and we took that money. We weren't able to partner at the time with the school district. We're still hoping to help where they can use the help. We decided to fund nonprofits who have early childhood centers where they're teaching reading. So up here, Edna Runner said, yes, sign us up. And we brought them all in to our offices. UF sent a trainer, and we trained their teachers in how to teach this program, and they love it. And so we are able to tell this story because, as you said, this is a business issue. Oh, yeah. So if you're not paying attention to it, you will be forced to. And it's also our obligation morally to ensure that our third graders can read. You know what the data says if you can't read by third grade.
It's not
the Florida
good.
Chamber is behind this as well, yep. As you know. And so we're going to continue to beat that drum, and we're going to continue to amplify the impact positively by supporting our literacy challenges.
So the foundation, you do a lot more than just education. We've talked about some other things. I want to talk about the African-American Museum and Research Library, which is a really cool project.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So this is really a fascinating story. So Roosevelt High School 40 years ago and the Coleman Park neighborhood was the heartbeat of Black life. Doctors, lawyers, everybody was there. They sometimes refer to it as Black Wall Street. The community was thriving. And then desegregation came along, and the decision was made to bus the Black kids 45 minutes away to white schools. So the unfortunate implication is that the kids really weren't wanted where they were bused. Their parents could no longer be involved in the school because it was too far away. The kids could no longer participate in sports. And by the way, Roosevelt High School won the state basketball championship during that period before desegregation. And so you start to see this negative trajectory of effect on children and that community. And then the school district did not, they sort of, I wish I had a better word, but abandoned the facility. Mm-hmm. And so it looked like it did 40 years ago. And the community has a group of men and women who are alumni of Roosevelt who said, we have to continue to advocate for this. We have to right this wrong. So you fast forward, there's been lots of starts and lots of stops. And I don't know why the stars were aligned about a year ago, but you have this beautiful collaboration, the school district, the county, and the community foundation. The school district has invested over $50 million in this footprint. The county seeded the effort with $1 million to the community foundation. So why are we out front? We're out front because the museum will depend on private philanthropy, and we can accept gifts. The county can't, the school district can't. And so I've had the opportunity, along with my team, to really get to know the alumni, and we are moved by their resilience. We're moved by their positive attitude about this should not be a story of the downtrodden. This is a story of who we are as a people. And we are still here, and we thrived, and we can continue to do so. And so this is one of those legacy-making projects for all who are involved, because this happened all over the country. But I think it's just West Palm Beach that's actually doing something this significant to preserve the heritage and culture of African Americans. It'll be a place where you can learn about the story of Coleman Park. You can learn about the Black Seminoles. So we had slaves escape the South. They landed here. They bonded with the Seminoles. They fought wars with the Seminoles. Stories that weren't taught where I went to high school. And it's also a nod to the future. We want the children to be able to see what their DNA came from, but also to look at what's ahead and look at how these people, your ancestors, survived. And so we've done 9 focus groups. We were in Belglade last week. We were at the barbershop last night, and the stories are very similar, but I would be remiss if I did not emphasize how much the group of people with whom we've been interacting want this to be a positive story. This is not an ugly story. It's not an angry story. It's about, you know what, we made it, and we're still contributing, and we want to contribute more.
Let's talk about the collaboration specifically with the business community, right? The business community is vital to philanthropy. How do you engage the business community? Large businesses, large corporations, because we have plenty of them here, and small business owners?
Well, that's another fair question. And I would say that we have a lot of work to do there. Mm-hmm. We are just starting to make a little bit of headway with the business community. First, we finally, as an organization, have the visibility and the presence, and we've earned some credibility. We've got a little street cred.
Oh, yeah.
So that has positioned us to be able to, we've earned the right, if you will, to have meetings with some very important business leaders. And so we've been able to introduce them to what we're trying to do. And they are appropriately skeptical, and we have to continue to sort of earn that right. But we can't do this alone. And the museum, as an example, will be the anchoring institution for this community. And we will need the business community to engage to develop Tamron Avenue and all of the other ideas that have been discussed in a lot of different meetings.
What about resiliency or like disaster preparedness or recovery, right? What is the community foundation's role in that?
So with COVID, we raised over $4 million like in a very short period of time. And we were the convener, and we basically funded every organization that we've worked with to continue to do their work. So we're set up to receive that money and to allocate it accordingly. And we've also had donors give money to help other parts of the state, and we've done that on their behalf.
What about the future? I want to talk a little bit more about the future, right? We talked about the growth earlier. What are some of the biggest challenges that Palm Beach and Martin counties are facing, and how is the foundation going to address those?
Okay, so without question, it's workforce housing.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
And it is workforce housing, and there's all sorts of definitions with nuances, but think of it like this. Nurses, teachers, firefighters, policemen, they cannot afford to live in the communities that they are serving. So like the museum, we've created a housing support initiative, and our goal initially was to have two funds of $5 million each. One fund was intended to provide money to the nonprofit developers who are trying to respond to opportunities that present themselves, but they're getting edged out by private equity and other buyers that have the cash. We honestly have had some struggles trying to actually bring that to fruition. So we're now looking at partnering with North End Rise and Venture Philanthropy, the nonprofit arm out of Quantum, to see how we can collectively work together to address this housing crisis. This is real. And I believe there's the appetite to address it, but we need that mobilizer to bring a lot of competing interests together to actually make a difference. In that part, I don't have a lot of confidence yet that we will navigate that well.
That's been, so we survey our members year round, right? And every year we do a legislative agenda and we ask them, hey, what's keeping you up at night?
Right.
And as long as I've been the CEO of the chamber, and it's been almost 6 years now, that has been one of the top 3 issues that every single one of our businesses are facing, right? Where their employees are going to live in housing, and that they're having a tough time recruiting and retaining people because of it. So you are 100% spot on. Yeah. That is an issue that we're facing now and that we're going to continue to have for a long time.
Yeah. And it's complicated because you have inherent challenges or priorities that compete against each other. And it's almost like we need somebody above to say, okay, these are the rules, but we don't have that. So we have to rely on collaboration and communication and partnerships. And we are trying. So stay tuned.
Awesome. All right. Equity is one of the core principles that guide everything you guys do at the foundation.
Yes, it is.
So how does that shape your approach to philanthropy and everything you do?
Okay, so bottom line, underserved, underrepresented, making paradise equitable for all. So when I first arrived, I got a sense of the conversation statewide, not nationally, but statewide. And what I wanted to do was to be certain that how we framed our work wasn't triggering or polarizing. So while that word exists in one of our priorities, you won't see it in many places because that word doesn't affect our mission. It doesn't affect how we were started and what we do. If you look at the $21.3 million that our fund holders granted last year, underserved and underrepresented in arts and culture, education, and health. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing, but we are modest about our phraseology.
So we got to start to wrap things up there, but there are a couple things that I want to get in for sure. What kind of advice would you give someone that wants to get into philanthropy work?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's funny. I had this conversation on Sunday with someone. First of all, you have to understand in yourself if you have the skill set to have conversations with donors and prospects that may take them out of their comfort zone, take you out of your comfort zone. You have to be willing to take the time to find out their why. Often people will tell you what they want, and that's not what they mean. And so a very skilled fundraiser or salesperson will have a probing strategy or a process to get behind it where it feels good. I've experienced this many, many times. And sometimes fundraisers get into this business because they can make more money. That's not the reason to get into it. Or it's about them. It's never about us, right? And so I try to ferret that out when I'm interviewing people. And how they work with me in the interview process is, I think, how they'll work with a donor. And so I really want to take the time to see what they know and how do they use what they know to help me see why they should be someone I would hire.
You touched on this, couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
You touched on this earlier about, and I ask this to everyone
Sure.
that comes on the show. We all have done some pretty cool stuff in our lives, right? Everything from being a parent to work stuff to, there's all kinds of stuff that we're really, really proud of. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want people to say about you 20 years after we're gone?
Oh, wow. That's so deep.
I know, but it's a good question.
So, I'm a military brat, lower middle class. And, I didn't plan on going to college. I went to high school outside of Annapolis, Maryland. It happened to be a very good high school in terms of cheerleading and academics and athletics. And when I went, it was 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And I made it in 10th grade. And sort of my life changed. Okay. And, but I was still not many of my high school friends went to college. But one day the cheerleading coach came up to me and she said, Danita, the University of Maryland's having cheerleading tryouts. You ought to go down there. We had won state championships. I was like, oh, okay. So I drove myself to the University of Maryland in my little light blue VW Bug. There were hundreds of girls on the floor at Coalfield House. And I was like, oh my goodness. I go down there. It's a completely different style. And I learn it and I practice, and I made it. I was like one of 2 incoming freshmen, but I had not even applied yet. And I remember I went home. My parents were excited, but how are you going to do this? Because, we didn't have money to do it. And I said, don't worry, I will figure that out. And so, of course, I borrowed money. I was always working. And if my coach hadn't said anything to me about it, that would have never happened, right? So then I get to Maryland and I can only afford to stay there 4 years. My dad told me to major in business. I did. It was hard. But my senior year, I had a question for my marketing professor. And, we had 400 kids in a class. And so he asked me, he said, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I said, oh, I don't know. I guess I'll just go work for the federal government. That's what everybody does down here. He's like, Danita, no, not you. You need to get into personal sales. And I remember Dr. Nichols, I said, what do you think? I'm going to sell vacuum cleaners door to door? He goes, I'm not talking about that. So he explained more. I remember leaving the business school and going to Coalfield House, which is where the athletics administration staff were. And I had a mentor, Colonel Fields. He was a retired colonel in the Marines, fought at Iwo Jima. And I said, hey, I just got to tell you this conversation I just had with my marketing professor. And I told him, and he said, Danita, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. And he called a guy named Jay Nussbaum, who used to play football for Maryland. And he was the vice president of sales at Xerox. And the next thing I knew, I was in that mix. So think about that. What's the lesson? I didn't really have a plan, but what happened serendipitously or through divine intervention, I kind of bumped into people who saw something and then made this recommendation. And then I had the wherewithal to follow through on it. And so I just got comfortable telling that when I first came to FAU, when I was introducing myself to the staff, I didn't want people to think that I sort of grew up. This is what I was always going to do. I had no intention. I was just going to be a great executive secretary. And then the rest is how it unfolded. And so I'm grateful to Dr. Nichols, my cheerleading coach, and Colonel Fields, all of them who have passed, because they didn't put me in a box. And their advice just wasn't lost on me. And I sort of ended up doing what I'm doing, which is still sometimes kind of hard to believe.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. It was so great to spend some time to get to know you a little bit, get to learn a lot more about the Community Foundation. Where can people get more information on the Community Foundation?
They can go to our website, yourcommunityfoundation.org, and there's all sorts of great information. You can call us, and I never call us, so I don't know what our number is, but I would give you my cell phone, but then I probably wouldn't get to it.
You get a lot of phone calls if you did that.
Our website's probably the best bet.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. Thank you so much for being here. It's been awesome. And for everyone tuning in home, that's all we got for you today. Make sure to share, tell everybody about all the amazing things going on in our region and here in the Palm Beach North region. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you guys. Bye-bye.